If you're not a designer, and if they've gone through the certified program with us, with Grant State designers and installers, we walk through this with them and show them what a failed system or an aging system is on the top, where you can see redox features, discoloration in the soils. You'll have rust color, gray colors, reductions in iron, depletions in iron. So this would be rated as poor to failing, because you've got no effluent in it, but there's signs that it's been flooded in the past. The other thing is, when you're evaluating a leach field, you want to be able to look at the D-box. The D-boxes are going to tell you a lot about the system as well, on what's happened over time. This one here, here's one that's got effluent ponded in the bottom, about 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches ponded in the bottom. I've looked at systems where people have said these are failed. I would give this one here a good to fair ratings, because there's still a lot of useful life in this leach field. Yes, sir.
I know we're not supposed to have questions till the end, but what is a D-box, sir?
D-box is, we've got photos of that.
Okay.
A line that goes into the D-box is called a distribution box, and if you have multiple fingers going out from the leach field, pipe and stone chambers, that distributes the water evenly. It's supposed to distribute it evenly to the leach field. So each row, each piece of pipe gets the
Like
same
if you
amount
had
of volume.
two homes or something with one septic or something, and then you have,
No, and
okay,
D-box,
forget it.
I can show you a little bit later on.
I'll wait until later.
All right, so here's the same thing, effluent ponded 6 inches right up to the bottom of the invert of the pipe, but no evidence of ponding above it. This would be rated as a fair system. It may be fair to poor, depending upon the evaluator. So the whole key here, if someone's doing an evaluation and they find ponded water in the bottom of it, ponded effluent, it doesn't necessarily make it a failed system. There's a lot of other things to look at. And this one here is the same thing, but you can see here the example has some redox features up in here, showing the high water table. And this one would be poor and need a repair or replacement. So the do's of septic systems: have the system inspected by a professional. We always recommend, or I would recommend, that you have it inspected. If you've got a pumper, just don't pump the system out. Do a walk around the leach field and start looking at it and doing a more thorough inspection, just to give you an idea of what's happening. Have it pumped on a routine basis, not when there's a problem. Problems always are going to happen on the 4th of July or Christmas or Thanksgiving. Those are when the problems happen, no other time of the year. Conserve water. So dripping faucet, for everyone here that's got that little dripping faucet that no one wants to fix, that can add 100 gallons or more a day to your leach field. If you're designed for a two-bedroom home, that's 300 gallons a day. If you've got a dripping faucet, you're equivalent to almost a bedroom there, just going drip all day long. A leaky toilet, up to 5,000 gallons a day. Some of the old-fashioned, if you still have the old high-flow fixtures. But even on the 1.6 gallons per minute, if that's running through 1.6 gallons and you multiply that over 60 minutes and 24 hours a day, there's a lot of water that's going to go into the leach field. Spread your wash loads out over the week. This is where we recommend that if you have a family, you don't. Saturday morning in my house is everyone wants to do their wash. I've got 2 teenagers who are heavily into sports, and they could just do 10 loads of wash on a Saturday. So now we had to give them Tuesday night, my son does his wash, Thursday night, my daughter does her wash. And the other thing is they like showers. My son, here's a good example of water use in teenagers. My son can't even mow the lawn without taking a shower after practice. He comes home from practice, takes a shower, and then he goes and mows the lawn. I don't know who he's going to meet, but replace old dishwashers and clothes washers with the high-efficiency models once they break down. Replace old toilets and shower heads with the low flow. Even if it's one a year, if you've got multiple toilets in the house, if it's just one every year, just to get it done to reduce the flow. How many here have water treatment systems at their houses? Anyone?
Like a Culligan or anything like that?
Do they go to the septic system or do they go to a dry well? Septic system. Industry, depending on who you talk to in the industry, if you talk to someone who sold you the system and in the water softener industry, they're going to say it's fine. If you talk to someone in the septic industry, they're gonna say it's not fine. The easiest answer is if you have a water softening system, is to daylight it to a dry well outside. Take it completely out of the system, and then nobody's wrong, you don't have to worry about it. What happens on especially some of the older models where they may be on a timer and you're back flushing the system, and there's a high rate of back flush. You may be putting 100 to 200 gallons of back flush into the system. The other thing on some of the water softeners that are brine or salt-based, that salt gets into the leach field or into the septic system, into the septic tank, and it disrupts the anaerobic bacteria. It kills it. It doesn't allow a breakdown of the solids. The other thing that salt will do, and we've seen it in a leach field with a D-box, a concrete D-box, deteriorating the D-box. It starts to disintegrate, becomes brittle over time from a water softener. So depending upon the industry, one is going to say don't worry about it. We're going to say take it out and put it in a dry well. And that's permitted in New Hampshire. You can take it, put it into a dry well outside.
Without permits.
Without permits. Maintain the top of the leach field. What do we mean by this? Keep it mowed. Keep the hard woody structures off the top of it, the vegetation that's trees. Keep it mowed down. Make it a perennial garden. Make it a flower bed or wildflower garden. But as soon as you start getting woody structures growing on it, shrubs and everything, and we see this a lot with seasonal property because it's away from the camp and they forget about it, that all of a sudden there's trees growing on top of it. Those roots get into the system and cause a premature failure. Bring in portable toilets for large parties. I always recommend this if it's waterfront or if it's just a regular home and you're going to have a wedding or you're going to have a large family reunion and you've got 100 of your favorite relatives showing up. Get a portable toilet. Maybe go out there. Maybe they won't come back. Flush responsibly. All of these things right in here. Cigarette, coffee grounds, diapers, handy wipes, kitty litter, all of those things. These are non-biodegradable products, meaning when they go into the tank, they will be in that tank and they will look like that forever. They don't break down. You can take a handy wipe out of a septic tank that's been in there for 2 years and it's still going to be a handy wipe. It's non-bio, non-organic, will not break down. These things consume up space in the septic tank, make it less efficient.
If you have that box of Kleenex in the back of your toilet, you need to get rid of it.
Well, the Kleenex, and this is something I always tell everyone. If you take a Kleenex and you put it in a jar of water, and you could leave it in a jar of water for a month. You take it out, dry it, it's still a Kleenex. Where toilet paper breaks down over time, Kleenex won't break down over time.
Or if you're desperate, how many times can you really use it before it's totally gone?
You know, the other thing is don't flush household chemicals down the drain, paints. We've gone out on systems myself, and we can tell that they just painted the house because the color of the septic tank is the exact same color as the outside of the house. And then they look at us and they wonder how you can tell this, but you got a gray house, it's a gray septic tank. It's pretty easy. Paint thinners, all of these things in here. Why don't you want to put those in? It will disrupt the anaerobic process and the aerobic process of a leach field. Same with antibacterial soaps. There's studies that are being done right now that are showing homes that use heavy antibacterial soaps will disrupt the anaerobic process of the leach field as well, or of the septic tank.
And to go one step further as far as the unused medication, if you know somebody that's going through chemo or radiation or something like that, you may need to get the tank pumped more often because it gets flushed down through the system and it will interrupt the treatment of the tank.
The do's on the leach field, get the water away from the top of it. Leach field, you know, we've been to sites where all the runoff from the lock comes down and goes over the top of the leach field. Divert it around it so it's not going over the top of the leach field. Keep records of when the system was inspected and pumped. That'll help you even on a future sale, showing that you've had regular maintenance on the system. Bring the access covers to grade. We talked about that. That's a reminder. It's there. It's in the ground. You're not walking over it. Vacation rentals. How many people have seasonal property that rent their homes out? Is there anyone? If if you do end up renting, some of the things that I recommend to our client base is limit the occupancy. I know that if I rent a condo to go skiing in the winter, and it says it sleeps 8, I can get 16 people in it. I'm guilty of doing it. It's the same on waterfront property. You may have a small lot designed for 2 or 3 bedrooms, and I show up, I bring my brother and my friends and everyone else, and now it becomes a party house on the weekend, so limit the number of people. Remove the washing machine and dishwasher, because you don't want them doing all their laundry before they're going home after a week there. Dishwasher, you remove that because all of a sudden it becomes paper plates, no one wants to do the dishes, so you're conserving water on the rental property. And if you've got tubs or soaking tubs, go to install showers. And don't drive on the leach field unless it's been designed for it. Is it an H20 loaded system? Meaning, can it withstand a delivery truck? Can it withstand a parked car? This is always a controversial one in here. Some people say, I've done it for years and my septic tank is as clean as can be. Whenever they pump it out, there's no solids in it. Well, the reason there's no solids in it is some of these additives increase the anaerobic process, break it down into even smaller suspended solids, and then it gets flushed into the leach field. So we don't recommend it. There's enough bacteria already in the human waste to do everything it needs to do. When should you pump? No set time schedule, 1.5 to 3 years. DES does recommend that you have your system inspected yearly. You don't have to worry about them enforcing that. What will impact the frequency of pumping? Garbage disposals. How many people have garbage disposals? How many had those garbage disposals in when the septic system was put in? So it may be designed. So one thing is you want to make sure the system was designed to handle a garbage disposal, which means the septic tank has to get larger. Garbage disposals will add about 50% more fats, oils, and grease to your leach field into the septic system. High water use fixtures and the number of people living in the home is one of the biggest factors. If you've got an elderly couple on retirement versus my house, completely different pumping schedules. And then the families goes up to this, families with younger children and teenagers. And then, as Deb mentioned earlier, medications used by anyone in the house. The medication is doing the same thing in the tank as it's doing in us. It's fighting off bacteria. It does the same thing in the septic tank. It kills the bacteria. So, that biomat that we talked about earlier, that little black surface area, that's what it looks like right there. That's a very thin layer. You can see the bright soils underneath. So that very thin layer will prevent the effluent from going down into the leach field and becomes ponded in the bottom of the field. It doesn't take very much. It can be a very thin layer for that to happen. This is a pipe and stone failed system. You can see the black sulfur sludge built up on the field. You can see bright colors above it. Here you can see the biomat is actually above the field, above the fabric, right in there. This is one of the tubes. Bright colors around the tubes. You can see right in here, it's black. The soil has turned black. That's the sulfur, the sludge building up on the field, the sulfur. This here has prevented this effluent from coming through the field or through the tube. And when you open up the ends of the tube, they're full of effluent. This is a D-box. So this is a concrete structure in here. Each one of these lines goes out into the leach field. Each one of these lines is supposed to evenly distribute the effluent to all portions of the field, so you're not overloading one section of the field versus the other. This particular picture is in here is of a job where they were real happy because it was 50 years old and they'd never pumped their septic system out. So here we got some examples of waterfront property. This is an island on Winnipesaukee, small lot, plastic tanks, and then a leach field over here on the side. So here's the 2 plastic tanks that went in. The force main ended up going around the house or the cottage, and the designer here created a planting bed, a raised planting bed to hide the system versus a big mound, and he made it on a curve. Better fit in the lot. And here's the plantings that would go on the top of it and on the sides of it. So it ended up becoming a planting berm. The owners know what it is, but if you go there as a guest, it just looks like a landscape feature in the yard. You wouldn't know it was there. Here's another lot on Winnipesaukee, and for the people with a waterfront property who have really tight lots and wondering what you can do. Here's a piece on Winnipesaukee, small lot. You know, you've got garage, house, 3-season porch, outside fixtures, patios. You've got ledge, small. So where in the existing system was over in here, where this new system was proposed, so we're 28 feet to the edge of the lake for this particular system. The state approved this system because it was an improvement over what it was there. It wasn't a, we weren't further encroaching what was existing on the property. So this one here was done with plastic tanks. So a lot of these lots, island property, you're not going to get a concrete tank out there. And on a lot of the steep property, you're not going to get concrete tanks down over the hill, so you can go with plastic tanks. So this is what it was, step down, 3 tanks here. Some lots you have to go multiple tanks in order to fit it in. Here's this looking down from the top. Primary septic, this ended up being an aerobic system in order to get the reduction of the leach field size. Septic tank, aerobic treatment, settling tank down here. This slide in here, this excavator, that tree was what was keeping that excavator from sliding down the lake. That's how steep it was. So this leach field is 3 feet wide and 30 feet long. That's the size of it. For a, this was a 3-bedroom home. That's what it looked like when they were done in the winter, and then mulching everything over when they were backing out of the site. This is one that actually Devitt designed here. This is a multi-stack system, enviro tube system. You can see a lower level down in here. So you take that same footprint, if you've got the soils to do it, instead of take this room as a leach field, and now take half of it and stack it on top of each other, multi-stack system. Reduces the area. And you can see the road is right here, and there's the lake. And it fit in there good. It fit in there really well. The soils were good. And she ended up using a multi-stack system. Do you want to talk about it at all?
That also has a pre-treatment system ahead of it also. And that was the only way we could get this particular one in. We're about 37 feet from the shoreline.
And here's just a close-up of the tubes and how they're stacked. You can see here's the water's edge. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Well, I will say one thing about DES is that they will work with you as a property owner to do a best fit scenario. You're not going to have DES come out to your site, look at it, and say, you can't live here any longer. They're going to work with you to get you an approved system one way or another. And here's an example of a lot I worked on that was 2,800 square feet. That's the lot right here. This building sitting on the lot took up 1,600 square feet of that piece of property. So they ended up being a unit in here, a small leach field in the front, and a well is right there, the existing well. This ended up, the existing system, this was so old, this home, the existing system was actually underneath the house in a crawl space. Here's one, tight lots again for waterfront property, house in here, leach field, or septic tank, leach field off to the side. This is the abutter's property. That's the abutter's house on the other end of the system. So here's an example of the state working with the owners to solve a problem to make it work. And the other problem you have with waterfront property is parking. Parking is typically a premium on a lot of these small lots. So you can also put them underneath the parking lot. This ends up being a 3-car parking area right in here. The cottage is right down in here. Each 20-loaded septic tank, you can see cast iron frames and covers on the top of it, like you would find in a city street. So this allows this homeowner to utilize the property and continue to park on it. This ended up being in this area here because it was the farthest point from the leach field to put or farthest point from the septic tank to the lake is at this portion.
What kind of cost?
This cost in here was around $24,000 to $25,000 to do that job. Here's one. where standard pipe and stone, this ended up being a pre-treatment unit as well. But here they ended up with 2 smaller septic tanks in order to fit them in around some existing trees and landscaping. Here's a property on Merry Meeting Lake, another one example of the state willing to work with you. You can see how steep this slope is. This is the main road. That's the slope right in here. Plastic tanks over in here. And the leach field ended up being put right where that mini excavator is. In between this rock and this retaining wall is where the leach field is.
How'd they get it out?
So in order to get the mini excavator in and out of the site, they had to have a larger excavator up on top to pull it in and out of the site. So this is one where the state, the example here is the state is willing to work with you. I can't say it often enough. The state would really work with you as a homeowner to solve your problem. And theirs getting pulled out for they can do the leach field. These next few slides we'll go through quickly. This is a presentation I did for the Lake Association, New Hampshire Lake Association. Here's a lot. Many of you will live on property just like this. Small lot, 10,000 square feet, 2-bedroom seasonal home. Slope of the lot average was 25%, steep lot. Upper Sunbrook Lake, well issues, abutters issues, drainage issues, access issues, mile back, retaining walls on site. Just a lot of issues on this piece of property to overcome. And then we had the lot challenges from the owner. He didn't want any more landscaping. He didn't want his landscaping to be destroyed. Couldn't cut any more trees. There's a large rock he wanted to have in place. A walkway needed to be where it was. He didn't want to move it. No large mounds. No vent. Worked between October and November 1st. And the thing that did come up in here, he didn't want it to cost a lot of money. So, some challenges. So this is the property right here. Here's that large rock. Here's the walkway. So looking up, this is the area that the leach field could go up in here. This was the access down to bring the tanks in. And a section of this was about 42%. Right when you went off the road, it was really steep. So the existing EDA was down here, 38 feet from the lake, 4 feet from the swale. Septic tank was 22 feet from the swale, 50 feet from the lake. There's about 220 square feet of usable area there to put all the tanks. So when you put all the setbacks on, the red area tells you that there's no usable land on this piece of property. So pipe and stone, we ended up looking at a number of different options out here for pipe and stone. Large rock was going to disappear, large mound, but this was the impact. The fill extensions, leach fillers in here, fill extensions, waivers, 2-to-1 slopes, about 2,300 square feet of impact for that piece of property. If they went with the Enviro tube system, smaller system, impact just over 1,000 square feet, still impacted his landscaping, rock, stairs. We looked at just going with the clean solution, aerobic treatment system, but here, 580 square feet, still a bigger impact than what he was willing to deal with. So then we looked at going, this is where you merge, this is where I can't stress enough, if you've got a designer who understands all the different technologies that are on the market and how you can make them work together with each other to benefit you and to get your state approval. A treatment unit with the perk that purple tube that we saw earlier on. Because it only had an 8-inch profile when it finished, the total impact was 375 square feet, and it fit right in between everything in here. You had septic tanks, 4 tanks down in here, septic tank, treatment unit, settling, pump chamber, hydraulic unit, and then it pumps up to the field. So those are the tanks. This one here, quick story here. We had to back these in a mile down the road, and my son was with me. And my son said, "Dad, you're terrible at backing up. Do you want me to do it?" So I let him back it in, because I never would have got it in there. Here's where the tanks went. Down in here, mini excavator. Tank coming out, the existing tank, the leach field is over in here. Waterfront property, soil erosion is an important factor on all waterfront property. This job here, everything was done with that small excavator and that mini skid steer the contractor used here. Everything had to be brought out with that skid steer. Tanks going in. A lot of the waterfront property, when you're using a plastic tank, you have to look at buoyancy.